Hello and welcome to another edition of Monster Island Radio. I'm Ben, and as usual, I'm joined by the ever enigmatic...
It's me, Graham.
Hello.
Mr. Question Mark, they call me in some circles.
Or Riddler, whatever you like.
Well, you know, patent pending.
Yeah. So today, we are talking about Mothra, 1961.
Yes.
As well as the 1962 American dub. Kinda.
Not really a distinct version in the same way that, Raids and King Kong Versus have like these other edits. Mothra is more or less, would you say, the same in Japanese and American edits? We've given a few minutes here or there.
Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, I think we should do a little bit of housekeeping before we get started, because
like, why are we doing them this order, basically?
Yeah, right? So we've been pretty negligent in explaining any of this, so anyone listening's probably like, they have no idea what we're going to talk about next, which is sorry about that.
If anybody's bothered, sort of jumping around all over the place.
So what we're doing, we are going through the Showa Godzilla films in order, but whenever he shares the spotlight with another kaiju, like Kong or Mothra,
a pre-existing monster,
yep, we're going to make sure to cover their respective debut film beforehand. So, I mean, last time we did King Kong versus Godzilla, so before that we made sure to cover King Kong 1933. Now we're covering Mothra 1961, as it's her debut film, before we get on to Mothra versus Godzilla next. And so on. You get the idea.
Some people might prefer to watch these movies in the order they were released, but we are sort of fixating on the Showa era as it exists for Godzilla, right? So we're taking that as our lead. So even though this was actually released before King Kong vs. Godzilla, in sort of our viewing of Showa, it's only relevant to watch Mothra now. If we'd watched Mothra when it came out, we then wouldn't get to, the versus action between them and Godzilla until later. So we wanted to keep the episodes sort of close together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I hope that explains it for everyone. Okay, so yeah, Mothra. So unsurprisingly, this is directed by Ishirō Honda, or Ishirō Honda, if you look at the American translation. They get his name wrong on the credits, which is nice. And we have Eiji Tsuburaya on special effects again. And then we have this screenplay written by Shinichi Sekizawa. So he did King Kong versus Godzilla after this. So this was his first screenplay for Toho. So this is kind of like the holy trinity for Godzilla movies in Toho.
The brain trust, even.
The brain trust, is that a word?
Yeah.
Cool, we'll go with it. So let's have a little recap. Oh god, this is long. Oh god, I keep doing this. Okay. Anyway, you'll have to put
quite a bit happens in this one, to be fair.
It does.
Like King Kong vs. Godzilla is pretty A to B movie, I'd argue, but this one, dare I say it, has a narrative.
Yes, it does. So
let's have the synopsis.
Okay, here we go. So a shipping vessel gets swept up in a storm somewhere off the coast of Japan, and its survivors are stranded on the uninhabited, irradiated infant island, or in the American dub it's called Beirut Island. And this is an island that the Relisican government had previously used for nuclear testing, as it was uninhabited.
The fictional country of Relisica.
Fictional country. So the survivors are saved by a Japanese rescue team and then rehabilitated by a team of scientists who wonder how it's even possible that they survived on such a radioactive island. As it turns out, they'd been given a red juice by island natives that lived there, and that protected them from the radiation. Amongst the team of scientists are two reporters for the Nitto Press, incognito. They were incognito until the photographer Michi Hanamura whips out a camera, takes a picture of the survivors, and then reveals that she and reporter Zen Fukuda are there to cover the story. The report is then published, which then prompts the Relisican government to deny knowledge of there ever being any inhabitants. Then a joint Japanese and Relisican expedition is put together to find out about the natives and how they live there. The expedition is led by the Relisican Clark Nelson, and it includes the Japanese anthropologist and linguist Shinichi Chujo. Nitto reporter Fukuda stows away on the expedition and, once discovered, ends up joining them to get the story about the island. Although they tell him not to, so he's just there as security.
They ask him politely, like, we know you came here undercover as a reporter, but, like, don't do any reporting.
Exactly.
Which, of course, he does. Yeah. Because he's a reporter. That's what I would do.
He doesn't, though, does he? Oh, we'll get into that. Once there, the team discover these strange glyphs on the island, which Shinichi determines later on that they are a symbol for Mothra.
Mm.
They also find some natives there, and 2 small women or fairies called the Shobijin, who convey that they want their island and the natives to be spared any further nuclear testing.
Pretty reasonable request.
I would say so, yeah. The team agree to keep it secret from the world and intend to leave the island, but Clark Nelson, he has other plans. As it turns out, the Riliscan government had okayed the expedition, but only because Nelson agreed to front the money. So he returns to kidnap the Shobijin and then showcase them in Tokyo for profit.
To make a return on his investment in the expedition.
Presumably. As a result, the island natives perform a ritual to the giant Mothra egg on the island, while in parallel, the Shobijin, who are now in Tokyo, sing a song to awaken her.
A real bop.
Oh, banger. Absolute banger. She hatches and makes her way to Tokyo to rescue them. The Shobijin then tell Shinichi and Co. that Mothra is coming and will destroy everything in her path in order to get them back. When she makes landfall in Tokyo, she cocoons herself on Tokyo Tower in preparation for her Imago form to take back the Shobijin. The public then turn on Nelson and demand that he release them back to Mothra to stop the onslaught, but instead he absconds to Newkirk City, which is the capital of Riliska, with the Shobijin in tow, ultimately drawing Mothra to their location, causing her to destroy much of the city in the process. Nelson panics and he tries to escape the police and ultimately dies in a shootout, where the Shobijin are then subsequently left in Shinichi's care. So then Team Shinichi then get the idea to paint a giant Mothra symbol based on the Infant Island glyphs on an airfield to lure Mothra safely there and return the Shobijin. Once returned, Mothra flies away, and everyone who didn't die lived happily ever after.
Good stuff.
So, this was your first watch, right, of Mothra?
That's right. I'd never seen Mothra before, and I would say that I quite enjoyed it. All for the fact of one very obvious and glaring recurrent theme, which is an excessive amount of painted face or blackface in this movie.
This might be the most we've seen.
Exactly. And I know that, we have, as we've commented before, we view these movies as historical artifacts and we have no interest in edited art. We think that things should stay as they are in the time that they're made as a piece of history. And I think that still Mothra can be viewed as entertainment, even with this caveat that it has an excessive amount of fair-skinned Asian people painted up to basically look black. I guess they could be seen as Oceanic or Polynesian, but it's this sort of neglecting. It's culturally insensitive, is basically what it is.
Oh yeah, completely.
Even though they're a fictional group of people, they still sort of go to this length to invest in the stereotypical mysticism of a tribal group, which is sort of unfortunate in a way, because I think that of all the kaiju movies we've watched in recent times and of the Showa era stuff that I've seen already, I think this was one of the more robust movies. I really enjoyed it overall. I thought the narrative's really good. I really like the characters. The humour in it is still strong, even with its age. Some of the effects maybe not the equal of a couple of other films, but it's great seeing Mothra, in her original appearance. So yeah, that was the kind of the thing where I don't want to kind of sort of tarnish the movie or overshadow the rest of our discussion with it, but that's the kind of the takeaway from it, is that coming to this, as we sort of talked about before, I think it's fair to put a kind of a caution in front of it that depending on your sensitivities or who you're watching with, you should be aware that a large part of the movie features painted face or blackface characters, and it's a bit uncomfortable, even though it is a very well made and enjoyable movie in other respects. The dark makeup is well, I don't know what's worse. The fact it's so badly done as well. Like, it looks like they've just like almost like finger painting to cover themselves and make themselves darker. So it's like they didn't even put effort into it. As a craft, it's not very convincing. Yeah, it sounds weird to say, oh, they should have done better blackface. That's not what I'm saying. It's a total lack of regard in every way. I know what you mean though. It just doesn't look like skin tone at all. No, it's just awful. It looks like a really streaky tan. It looks like paint. Yeah. It's awful. Just like, well, as we said with King Kong versus Godzilla, like could they not just look exactly the same and do face paints in the way that you might just do a bit of war paint, just paint like a couple of red, brown, green stripes on the face to be like, oh, culturally they have some sort of communication here. They're a tribe. Yeah. Or I thought when the Shobijin twins first turned up, I was like, oh, maybe all the natives are going to be small. Because like I said, I've not seen this before. You would assume, wouldn't you? And I was like, and then they never really bothered to explain why those two women are small and the rest of the people aren't. But I mean, with that aside, and certainly Mothra is not the most aggressive example of cultural insensitivity or racism in an old movie at all. It's still like a very well written story, I think, and it has other redeeming features, fortunately. So it's just kind of a shame and sort of a caution that I think I would want to put up front. I know usually we get to the recommendation at the end, and we will do, but just like, it's a bit much, honestly. It's probably the worst example. But you've seen this many times before, I guess, and I've seen it a couple of times before. So consider it a PSA because the box does not tell you that this is in it. What's the company? Cinema something? Eureka Cinema. Eureka. Yeah. Have, as far as I can tell, made no effort to say like, oh, this is culturally insensitive based on the the standards of the day, but here it is presented as a work of art, and that's all I think they should say. And, Mothra has blackface in it, and it's unfortunate. But did I enjoy it? I think with that major detractor noted, I did. Okay, and I guess you'd say the same, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how this film came about? There was one of the producers for Toho, Tomoyuki Tanaka, he hired a bunch of writers to come up with a kaiju and a story. Right. So it'd then be written as a book, and then it was serialized into a Japanese magazine. This is quite common because... is it? This is what I was going to ask. This is like, I was like, is this a thing? I know like serializing stories is a thing, but to be like, okay, we're going to come up with we want to do a film, but make a book first. Is it like, do they want to see how well it fares with audiences before they take the plunge? I don't know. I don't know if this is historically as broad a convention as I might make it out to be, but I do know that when they made Lady and the Tramp, the animated Disney movie, Walt Disney commissioned a novelization of it before it came out, so that when the movie released, it would feel like a more legitimate film because they could say it's based on this book. Oh, they did the same. They wanted to do the same with King Kong 33, and I think the book came out after in the end. And you get novelizations of like, oh, here's a novelization of like Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and it's like, who's going to read that? But people do. There is a market for that. It's quite a niche market, but I think it is. It's got a foundation in an old-fashioned notion that the book makes the films feel more justified. What's quite funny is the first movie novelization I ever got was of Godzilla 98, and I think it might have been the last. We should do a read-along. Yeah, we should get that and do an episode just on that. I've read the novelization of A New Hope, and it was so tedious. Well, yeah. So in the book, like, because you were wondering about the why are they small? Why is there only two small people? So there was a lot of stuff in there that was stripped out in the movie. So naturally, there were these island gods, and one of them killed themselves, and then the other one, she killed herself and like tore herself up into 4 pieces, and those 4 pieces became 4 fairies, which then it got knocked down to 2 for the film just because it seemed better. So they are basically
they are like, I suppose, mini goddesses.
So that's why they look alike, because they're supposed to be part of the same person. That's such a great concept.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've not been able to. I tried to see if there was an English translation of the book, and there isn't one as far as I can see. If someone knows of one, that if there is one, please let us know, because I would love to read it. But I've not found one yet. So, but yeah, it was. I thought that was quite cool. But so I think it was good that a lot of that was stripped back, because there's a lot of elements in this film, and it's not like overly convoluted or contrived like in King Kong versus Godzilla, with the string and stuff like that. There's lots of contrivances, but in this film, to my eye, there's not really any of that. It's pretty straightforward, despite the amount of elements that are within the film.
There's a little bit of back and forth where it's like they go to the island and then they go to the island again.
That's a bit
those
funny.
Sort of things are very typical of these Showa era movies, which is like, could we save some time?
Because you could be like, oh wait, I thought they just left the island. Why are they back?
Yeah, it's repetitive in a way that's like, what are we doing? But it does almost seem to, deliberately or not, use King Kong as a framework, because they go to this island, they kidnap the Shobijin twins, they put on a show, and in this story, it's the catalyst for Mothra coming and causing the havoc, whereas in King Kong, they take King Kong and then the havoc happens. It's like, well, that's why I think in some ways this movie feels a lot more robust, because it's kind of a refinement of King Kong. And like we said, we think King Kong is an undeniable classic, but we also lamented that the film crew who become the catalysts for all of the King Kong's destruction aren't villainized at all. And in this movie, the people who bring back the Shobijin twins, so like Clark Nelson becomes the villain, and that's how what's the character's name in King Kong? I can't remember that now. Denham is not really villainized in King Kong, and that was our frustration. It was like, this guy should be picking up the check for all this. So I kind of do see it as inspired and also kind of refining King Kong's plot.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Sekazawa, he said as much.
Oh, really?
He was following the same beats as King Kong and Godzilla 54. So it's kind of like an amalgam of the two, really.
Yeah, it
which
makes
is
sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Especially if you're introducing a new kaiju, you wanted to get it right straight away. So it's like, why not follow those same beats? They've been proven to work. May as well do it right.
Yeah, and it still does feel quite original, because the Shobijin twins themselves are very unique at this point. Mothra's nothing like Godzilla or King Kong, either in appearance or characterization. And their motivations are purely like, I've been called upon to protect these specific goddesses, and that's like not part of those movies at all. So it manages to use some of the DNA from that stuff without just being like the same thing, which is ironic, because we're already seeing in this movie, like, oh, they go to this island and there's special juice. And in Mothra and King Kong versus Godzilla, like, there's special juice on an island. And that's like, I'm starting to pick up from these movies that we're going to be seeing a lot of that, actually, that there's going to be a lot of special juices in these films.
It's funny, because I'd seen King Kong versus Godzilla. And then after that, I'd seen Mothra years later. And I forgot about the juice being in King Kong versus Godzilla. And then when we rewatched King Kong versus Godzilla, I forgot about the juice in Mothra, because it had been a while. And then coming back again, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, they've recycled it into King Kong versus Godzilla.
It makes a lot more sense in Mothra, but it's way more of a central plot element in King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's weird, where it's just like, we need to talk about this juice. And I got this a bit off the audio commentary for Mothra on this release, where they talk about, oh, they're gonna, come back to this juice again, and they named a few movies. And I was just like, wow, the Showa era is just gonna be like flipping juice-a-thon. It's weird. Yeah. So we're gonna, the more we cover it, and this is why it's good to pop out and do King Kong and do Mothra, and then we'll probably do Rodan, right? And we're gonna have a bit of a break. Although I think Rodan might have the magic juice in it. I've not seen Rodan.
I don't know if it does, actually, to be honest.
This is why it's good to do these, though, because I've been so purely a Godzilla fan in the past, and I haven't watched Mothra, I haven't watched Rodan, so we're going to get to that.
Yeah, so, what you're saying, like, when, it kind of mirrors the same beats as King Kong and stuff like that. But the way it does refine it is, it's much more simplified, I think. So there's a little less room for nuance. Like, you could kind of infer villainy of Carl Denham and that team and stuff like that. But this is very much Realistica. Like Realistica is bad. Shinichi and the Nitto Press, like they're the good guys. Very much Japan good, Realistica bad, and then like Infant Island. Islanders, they're kind of neutral essentially.
If you look at Godzilla 54, like the original, that has a nice amount of character ambiguity between.
I prefer that generally.
Yeah. There's one group saying we should kill Godzilla, and the one group saying that we aren't. But then they also have their own story. Like there's a love triangle, and there's a father-daughter thing, and there's the would-be son-in-law relationship. So they're not purely good and bad, are they? It's like, well, you can decide as an audience member, like, kill Godzilla or don't kill Godzilla, and that is fun. Whereas in King Kong, the ambiguity is seemingly there just through a lack of initiative on the screenplay. Just like, well, Carl Denham's a film director, and we wouldn't want to villainize a film director, would we, whilst we're directing a movie? Yeah. And like you say, like Mothra simplifies it. And even though I really love Godzilla 54, I think if I had to choose between inviting ambiguity or a complete lack of specificity, I would choose the Mothra way of just saying, like, can we have a villain? Can we have an actual villain? I want to kind of have the simple thing, and it's nice when you get something like the 54 Godzilla, which is well executed in that complexity, but it's so rare.
That's the problem, isn't it? It's like it doesn't always work. So having that, it's having it simplified like this is generally more entertaining.
Yeah, sort of like one or the other would be the best case scenario. Like, can I flip-flop between some heady stuff and some fun popcorn stuff? And I don't like it when the popcorn stuff is just like, well, we're not going to commit to anything specifically. And some of the Millennium Era stuff is like that, which is like, what's really... It is very cartoony, like, mustache twirling villainy sometimes, but even so, it's never that emotive for a viewer, I think. I prefer this, was just like, oh, this guy is bad. He's stolen these little women and he's making them sing songs. Like, don't like him. Come on, let's sort it out. And I really liked Fukuda.
Yeah.
As a character, because he was like this heroic sort of like, not reluctant hero, but like this guy is sort of, he's not a soldier. He's not like an action guy. He's just a reporter. He's like a comedy character. The actor's a comedy actor, right? And then he becomes sort of like the de facto sort of, I'm going to save these little ladies and get this whole Mothra situation sorted out. And I was like, this is a good story because this character is, obviously he's like simplistically good, but it's also interesting to see him sort of in a situation which isn't his actual vocation, So I like that. He's not a scientist. He's not a soldier. He's not like a Godzilla Defense Force warrior like you might see in Millennium. It's like an actual character that's sort of separate from the specific problem of the movie, and so often it feels like the characters are just created to deal with a problem which has also been created. There's no kind of drama catalyst there, and that does have this a bit.
Yeah. So the characters, we've got Zen Fukuda.
Yes.
So that's played by Frankie Sakai. He is a comedian in Japan, isn't he?
As I understand it, yeah.
That's what I thought. I mean, my knowledge of 50s and 60s Japanese comedians is pretty sparse.
No, we're not cinema historians either. We're Godzilla fans, so we're picking up what we are from these movies.
But his role is probably one of the best that I've seen in a Godzilla film.
He's fantastic.
He does the comedy right, not like he's hilarious or anything, but it's just some of it's actually quite subtle. But the way he can play it straight, he can do the funny bits, and it's like I feel like it's quite I don't know. It's just really, really good.
It feels natural. It feels natural, basically, isn't he?
He's a very talented guy. His I really liked his like when he's kind of playing it straight. Like his hatred of Clark Nelson was great. Obviously no one liked that guy, but his particular distaste at him I really enjoyed watching. And I found because I watched it a couple of times again, he gets better with rewatches, and I think generally the film gets better as you rewatch it because you can see just like little actions he performs throughout the film that you probably wouldn't spot the first time around. Like when they're with the scientists and they're incognito, you can see him sort of signaling to Michi to like take a picture, which I didn't spot the first 2 times I'd seen it, but like seeing it again, you can kind of just see all these little things that he's doing. And like when they realize they have to, they say later towards the end, oh, we need to pray to God that it all works out, kind of thing. He does like the Father, Son, Holy Spirit symbol on himself, but he doesn't know how to do it, so he's just sort of like pointing in different directions. And it's like those little things. I think that's probably his own flair.
He's
own
elevating
comedic
the
flair.
material, basically.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely made for one of the best Godzilla characters, really. So we also have Michi Hanamura, who's played by Kyōko Kagawa. So she's the photographer for Nito Press. A
rare example of an actual female character.
An actual character. She's great. She's crafty, not in a sneaky, duplicitous kind of way. And she can hold her own. Well, I found, and especially working with someone like a character like Zen Fukuda, who's quite feisty, I suppose. She stands up against him, I think, perfectly well. And I think, just a good character. And like you say, a good female character, which is not that common throughout some of the films we've seen. So
no, they're usually just the damsel in distress, or they're there as a sort of a nagging irritation on the men.
Pretty much.
And even when we think they're well performed or we like the character, it's like they're not a great representation. And she has her own role and her own agency in this, which is good.
Yeah.
The only thing I didn't like about her was that she seemed to have a very small secret camera that she only used after her big, unmistakable, huge camera got spotted. And it's just like, just use the secret camera first. But yeah, she's good. I liked her.
And I don't think she was there. I don't think she screamed once, did she?
She's not really there as a love interest or as
somebody to get. Not at all.
She doesn't get kidnapped or anything like that.
I think the only thing that happens is like they take her camera off her.
Which is a natural sort of reporter sort of situation.
Yeah, I mean, So, great character. Really good. And then we have Shinichi Chujo, the linguist. So he's played by Hiroshi Koizumi. So he was in Godzilla Raids Again. He was the fiance in Godzilla Raids Again.
Yeah.
He's like my favorite Godzilla actor because I think he's so handsome. I absolutely love this guy. And if you can cast your mind back to when we covered Tokyo SOS, one of the Millennium Miracles.
He returns.
He returns.
It was a quiz question, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, was it?
At some point or another, which I did not get correct.
Oh, I seem to remember saying to you that it's worth watching Mothra and then Tokyo SOS back to back. Well, maybe not back to back, but one after the other, because that acts as a really good sequel to Mothra. So I'd still recommend doing that because, it follows on.
There's a whole sequence where he sets out the school chairs with the pupil to attract Mothra, basically, and they use the Mothra symbol, don't they, in this courtyard? And
it's such a great sequel to this film, despite some of the negative things we said about it. We've got, who else have we got? We've got Sadakatsu Amano, who's played by Takashi Shimura. So he's the Nito editor. So he was in Godzilla 54 and Raids Again as Yamane.
Looks very different without a moustache, right?
Yeah, it took me a while to recognize him.
Yeah.
And he's basically just J. Jonah Jameson in this.
Well, nicer than that, I suppose.
Oh yeah, much nicer. I think he's a nice character. I mean, he doesn't really have that big of a role, really. I think a lot of the returning cast have actually quite small roles. Like one of the doctors is, Patches from 54. What's his name? Sarazawa. And then we have Clark Nelson, who's played by Jerry Ito. So when I first saw him, I was like, he looks like Mr. Bean crossed with Steve Buscemi.
Oh my God. They're an awful thing to say.
So yeah, he's your, as you're saying, mustache twirling villain. Almost cartoon level villainy. Scooby-Doo-esque. There's that bit right before he gets shot where he literally grabs a cane from an old man for some unknown reason. I don't know why.
But you're going out, you need to do the one few things.
One final bad guy thing.
It's on his bucket list, I guess.
Yeah.
I always wanted to do this.
So yeah, he goes rogue. He steals the Shobijin for profit. Everyone hates him as a result. Yeah, right level of entertaining villainy for me. It was like he's totally unlikable without it being completely farcical.
Yeah, if you're going to go cartoony, then do it fun. Yeah. There's a way to do it where it's very grown. Someone just like too cartoony where it becomes like boring. But the actor seems to have a certain amount of fun with it. I heard from the audio commentary that he did all his lines phonetically because he doesn't speak Japanese.
Yeah.
So I think given that, he did quite well. And I think it's working. So
yeah.
I mean, obviously, I guess if we were native Japanese speakers, we might listen to it and think, this guy's terrible. Because we're reading the subtitles, right? So we maybe not hearing that it's so obviously phonetic, but...
I think he speaks quite slowly, but I thought that was just because he was trying to sound like a, very purposeful and evil.
Very evil man.
Yes. As we're saying, he mirrors Carl Denham in King Kong.
But with the correct characterization.
But with the correct characterization, yeah, exactly. And even to the point where... he's taking something from an island to then showcase it. Except rather than showing something huge, he's showing something tiny. The two Shobijin.
And in King Kong, when they go to this sort of Broadway stage performance of King Kong, it's like, what, they're just going to look at this guy? Yeah. He's on a huge stage to look at. In this one, they have them perform a song, but paradoxically, and in contrast to King Kong, it's like, nobody's going to see them.
No,
nobody can see the little ladies that are singing. It's
you could put two Barbie dolls there and have music playing, and no one would know. It'd be
much better as a TV show for all of it, really. Or King Kong should be in like a public outdoor space where you can see like a 360 view, like a zoo, basically, right? It should be in a zoo, a massive fucking zoo, and then the Shobijin twins should be on like a TV show with like a small studio audience. But either way, it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's just dumb. It's just silly.
He wouldn't have got the money though. Oh no, I suppose he would have advertising. No.
Yeah, and then reruns and like you get your residuals. Come on.
So yeah, when they're performing, actually, they cut to like that first song they performed, the Mothra song. They cut to the island as well, where they're doing like a dance.
And it's sort of like there's a connection. They're sort of hearing, not literally, but they're getting the message from the music. So you get that.
Yeah. I wonder if like because this is kind of going into the lore of Mothra a bit. I think I wonder if the dance that they do is because there's like a male and a female character.
God.
They dance together, and it's almost like a mating ritual. And I wonder if they're doing a dance based off the gods that were in the book.
Yes, perhaps.
But, I mean, and I was like, oh, that's quite cool because if that's the thing, there's paid attention to some of the lore there. But it's frustrating because I really want to read the book. I want to know if my assumption is correct, but I have no idea. But yeah, we also have the Shobijin,
the Peanuts.
So the Peanuts, as their singing duo is called in Japan. So Yumi and Emi Eto. They're popular in Japan at the time. And they're kind of the main character.
They're a big draw at the very least,
Yeah,
Characters might be stretching it because they never really have a proper like sort of, I don't know, not characterized as such. Other they're sort of symbolic. The deities are very simple, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But they are sort of like the main focal point. All of the drama happens because of them being taken somewhere, or them singing a song, or them being rescued, or them going to where is it? What's the foreign country called? The made up place.
Oh, Relisica.
The sort of where are we sort of country.
Yeah. So the composer for this, it was gonna be Akira Ifukube.
Mm-hmm.
But he refused because he didn't feel like he would be able to do a song that would do justice to the Peanuts and to Mothra. So they gave it to this other guy, Yuji Koseki.
Right.
And so for this film, they wanted a kind of Disney vibe to it.
Oh, right.
And that's evident really by the music. You've got the Mothra song is kind of the big draw. And it's weird to have a sing-along song almost tied to a character, like, or tied to a kaiju. It doesn't happen with any other monster.
It's quite unique, yeah.
It's so unique to Mothra. And as far as I'm aware, it hasn't been bested. And I don't think anyone's tried doing it again.
When are we going to get like the remix version in the modern MonsterVerse movies, though?
They have. Yeah, they did in King of the Monsters.
But did they sing the song, though, with the lyrics?
Oh, sorry. No, it's just the song in the score.
When are we going to get like the Billie Eilish version? Is what I'm saying. Like, is Taylor Swift not available? Lizzo, help us out.
Lizzo one would be great.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, so that would be amazing. Oh my goodness. Having music cues for characters, it's common. You got one for Godzilla. I think all of them have one.
Yeah, we're both a big fan of musically directed enjoyment in movies, especially these kind of films.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but
love a good theme.
But to have an actual song, like a catchy pop ballad almost, it's just like I'd
say it's catchy, but I don't know if some of the songs. I mean, it's just the one song, I guess, right?
There are a couple.
The main one that they sing is quite morose in a way, where they're just like, they sound sorrowful.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'd be like popping it on for a sneaky listen so much, but I'm going to need to rehear the more upbeat one to kind of make that connection myself. I wouldn't have thought that about Disney or Disney as an inspiration without you saying so.
Are you saying that there was a more catchy one?
I don't know. I can't remember that there was, to be honest. No, I liked the catchy song that I can recall, but it wasn't like a fun, happy tune the way you might get like an I Want song in Disney followed by like a reprise and then I guess I've got what I want.
Yeah, well, I think it was Disney-esque without to have a musical element. So what I like about the Mothra song, like the core of the hook is pretty much just. It's 2 notes in a 3-note sequence. It's like, da 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 da. But then it develops into a full melodic piece. Like you say, it's a bit morose, but I like the actual piece. And I don't want to oversimplify what it is they've done with the score, but I think and that song. But I think some of the strongest and most memorable scores, they have a very simple structure or a very simple melody. So if you think Jaws, that's John Williams, right?
Yep.
Da-dum, 2 notes, and then
they did the same thing with Thanos in Infinity War.
Oh, right.
He's just 2 notes, and it's very much like it's very distinct versus the usually very noisy and hyper generic music that they would use in Marvel. It's like, this is like signifying a presence, and it's very strong feeling of presence. So it's lifted from Jaws, pretty much, but it's like it's working. So
absolutely
it reflects what you're saying.
Yeah, and like you think of like Psycho with the stabs, the actual stabs in music as well. That's 1 note.
Yeah,
and like the Twilight Zone theme. I know that's a theme tune, so it's a bit different, but that's just 3 notes, and you'll never ever forget it.
Sort of a hypnotic quality to that.
Yeah. So I'd liken it to like black and white photos. So where with a color photo, color's almost a distraction, and you don't really focus on the subject. But when it's black and white, you focus on the subject and the composition. And it's not to say that it's just a couple of notes and that's it, because it does build to a full melody, this Mothra song. And I think it gets better as it develops. But that's I don't like saying simplification, because that's not what it is. It's that kind of almost limiting yourself in a way to come up with a melody. It pays off dividends.
It becomes a signature, doesn't it? And it can be used very slightly. And when it's not like a big full symphony of music, you can just put in those notes, and with a good sort of, when it's well established within the movie, what that means, and it's very effective. And obviously that's, as you say, that's why it's been used so broadly in different kinds of cinema. It's so well done. Good kind of limitation.
Right, why have 20 notes when 2 would do, kind of thing. It's it's lovely. It's my favorite music in any kaiju film. I love it so much. I have the soundtrack on vinyl.
Wow. Is it sort of special in any way? You got a big like butterfly print on there? Or?
Yep. It has the wings on the disc. That's cool. I'll post a picture on Instagram. and Twitter.
Where did you get it from? I guess it's all gone now these days.
It was from Waxwork Records. They might have more. I don't know. It was a while ago I got it. They do reprints anyway. They do represses. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, in our flat we sing it a lot. And like honestly, like when did I get this Eureka disc? I can't remember. Like maybe a year or two ago.
Yeah.
Honestly, we've been singing it since then. Like,
sounds incredibly annoying.
Oh man, it absolutely is. But to us, we love it. So we sing the Mothra song a lot. So yeah. Anyway, with the musical element of this, I think it gave it a much more family friendly sort of feeling to it, without it being too silly. And it was the right balance for me.
I do agree that it's the perfect amount of silliness, because it is a whimsical fantasy story, but it's not too self-serious, but it treats itself realistically. You know, like they're not poking fun at the little Shobijin twins. They're treated as like an actual thing, but they are kind of like whimsy as well. So it's sort of like it's very easy to watch it, and I would imagine, at least during its original release, and its era of cinema, children would have really enjoyed this.
Yes,
and that's because it doesn't talk down to you or diminish its own fantasy. It treats its fantasy as like legitimate, like here it is.
Yep.
And that's why good fantasy movies work, when it doesn't like sort of talk down to you or act like. And this is always a good example, and you see this so much in the superhero genre, where they're just like, oh, what, would you like to wear like a spandex suit? And they kind of make fun of themselves. And I always find that grating, and I think you do as well. Where it's like, we just want to enjoy this, like, because it's silly. And I think Mothra does a really good job of that, where the drama feels like it's on a good level, where it's not too much, not too little, and it's not too silly, not too little, where it's like, it's fun, and you're allowed to enjoy it, is what I mean.
Yeah, completely. I wonder how kids nowadays would feel about it, because I think the only criticism I have for this film is it's a touch on the slow side.
I would agree, and I don't think I would have sat through this as a child.
Yeah, I don't think I would have either. I think, like you're saying, like audiences back then, maybe. But I mean,
in the 60s, I think a kid would have enjoyed it, but me in the 90s, nah.
No. I think that's probably because of films we grew up on, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like, it takes 45 minutes until you see Mothra hatch, and then then you don't see her in her full form until the last 20 minutes.
They all sort of suffer from this sort of not really knowing how much to show or not show. And Mothra does take way too long to turn up, and that is why we preferred the American version of King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah.
Because it teases you a little bit, and Godzilla versus Kong, which came out recently, does the same thing. You get a bit of Godzilla at the start, and then I'm happy to wait a little bit. And I think as a child, I was the same. I think as a kid in the 60s, I would imagine this would have been quite amazing, especially if you were the sort who liked music and liked the Peanuts and that, like, oh wow, the effects it's making a lot of these two little ladies, it would have been really amazing.
Yeah.
But in the 90s, going from Jurassic Park to this, I would have been like, no.
Yeah.
Incidentally, not to go off topic, but almost all the compositing in this movie is absolutely dreadful. So
it is not good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
We'll get to the effects.
Yeah, it's not great. I wonder if, like you're saying, like with the Peanuts, they're quite, maybe because they were, I suppose, popular at the time.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the draw. So like you're saying, it's like, well, we don't need to have Mothra show up straight away. Let's build some tension. We've got some good characters here. The Peanut,
exactly.
The Shobijin twins. So I think, then presumably that worked because it was a success.
And they reuse the Peanuts, and they keep the Shobijin twins in later appearances of Mothra. And I think, effects being a bit wonky aside, it probably would be fairly convincing to audiences back then, because even with the kind of blue halo you get from bad compositing, it's still like, well, how are these small ladies there? It's like, I think it would have been entertaining more so than it is now. And that's just films aging, isn't it? So, I would hope that people would have really kind of liked it at the time, even if it hasn't sort of held up pacing wise. Maybe people would have been more patient than we are. And this is the thing, like saying, oh, well, go from Jurassic Park to this. It's going to feel like a bit of a slog until the big butterfly turns up at the end.
Yeah.
But with different sensibility, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
The whole like pupation period of Mothra, I always find that a bit of a drag. Like, oh, they've got to spend a certain amount of time as a slug or whatever it is until it becomes that. And I was like, yeah, I know this is because of the character, but I'm always just like, it is a literal kind of clock watch for me. It's just like, well,
it is.
Caterpillar, now Cocoon, and then Moth, and it's like, yeah, it's always that repetitive element would be quite fresh, I guess, the first time you watched this in the 60s.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's only sort of become more slow with age, I suppose, and maybe it wasn't so sort of laborious when it first came out.
I think is it Ghidorah three-headed monster? I think that's the one. I'm not sure if you've seen that.
I think I have.
Is that the one? I think this is the one where she doesn't even reach her imago form. She's caterpillar the entire time.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I remember when I saw that, I was like, when is she gonna become a moth? And it just didn't happen.
That's a thing, I think, where they do sort of go through this phase of being like, the moth skips a movie, and it's like, oh, it takes a bit more time, or it needs to be more of an event, and it makes Mothra sort of special in a way that I do sort of like. If you think about a comparison I would make here would be Thunderbirds, where it's like Thunderbird 2 is coming out, right? Every episode pretty much, but when you see Thunderbird 3 or Thunderbird 4,
right,
it's like, okay, right, and Mothra is basically like, you know, we've got Godzilla and we've got other monsters who are coming about. I mean, if Ghidorah is not, you know, doing it for you, I don't know what, you know, Mothra being there isn't going to change things. You've already got this three-headed monster.
Yeah.
To be fair, so it does sort of make Mothra like a bit of a novelty when they sort of stretch out. And I think we've basically done that in Monsterverse. We had Mothra in King of the Monsters, and then they didn't have her because they killed her, you know, in Kong. In Godzilla versus Kong. But I think now they're going to do this. They're doing another Monsterverse movie. I'm expecting Mothra to come back. Honestly,
same. I am as well.
It fits that sequence. So
yeah. Yep.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
She didn't really do enough in King of the Monsters.
No.
To me. And
no.
I'm like, come on. Let's see a bit more.
Considering she was the first one you saw, you kind of like you thought there was going to be a lot more happening.
She shows up and gets done all too quick.
Very
and
quickly.
I mean, that's the whole problem with King of the Monsters, that it teases you and the payoff is not enough. But
yeah,
we have a whole episode on that. So
yeah, go back and listen. Mothra is just, she's so unique. She's both intimidating and caring, like almost like maternal in a way.
Formidable sort of force of nature sort of thing.
Yes. So and what I really like about her, where you have like Godzilla and others, you know, like Rodan, Anguirus, whatever, they almost like brainless, lost animals. You know, they're scared, they're smashing things because they're confused. Whereas
they're just looking for that lady.
yeah. Whereas Mothra,
she's looking for a lady in a different way.
In a completely different way. She's so focused and resolute. Yeah. You know, she has complete awareness about what she's doing. You know, almost intent on wrecking stuff.
I would agree that she does have intent.
Yeah, to get back to Shobijin. But it's without malice. You know, it's like she's not doing it because, oh, you know what, I can kill you, so I will. It's like, if you're in my way, you know, that's your problem.
I think you can argue that, especially towards the end of this, in the New Kirk City sequence, she's kind of out of control and just angry and like giving back these twins and acting in the same way Godzilla kind of does, which is like, I'm responding to a signal and I'm here and I'm going to attack until these things get freed. But I do still feel like, on the whole, and I agree with you, like with what you're saying, that like she's got more of a sort of agency than King Kong or Godzilla display. Where it's like, I mean, King Kong and Godzilla are different in the modern ones, where they're kind of more characterized in these more recent movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually they're a brainless, sort of hapless victim sometimes.
Exactly. But she never comes across as a victim at any point.
You don't really see a movie where it's just like, Mothra's attacking and we don't know why, as far as I'm aware. It's always like she responds to a call, either from her fellow kaiju or from the Shobijin twins, or some sort of economic or ecological need that the movie creates. And
she's a great, unique character. And, you know, it's not just her character that sets her apart. It's her design. Because when you think of like Godzilla, Rodan, Anguirus, lizards, they're all riffs of dinosaurs and reptiles and things like that.
Even Gigan with the circular sword chest is still like a version of Godzilla.
Pretty much, yeah. So yeah, this design, it makes full use of it being a color film. This is one of the first color films, with the orange and yellow striped wings and the white and orange body and like the blue eyes. Very striking.
In contrast with the sky there as well.
Yeah, exactly. Very striking design, and it's not really changed all that much over the years.
No.
It's right out the gate. It's a very, very good design. I love it. I absolutely love her design.
Would you say it's fair to say that she's your favorite kaiju, really?
I think King Ghidorah still is, because I love how horrible he is.
Oh, the personality aspect.
Yeah. But I suppose it would be a tough call between him and Mothra. Yeah, absolutely. She's great. Love her. Although
Icon.
Sorry?
Icon. Second only to Lizzo.
I've never really liked her caterpillar form though.
Well, that's because it symbolizes a waiting room. Effectively, I was like,
there's that.
We're gonna get there.
There
shooting
is
some spring attack, or whatever it is, spring shot, the Caterpie move from Pokemon.
Yeah, there is that element to it, but also it's not very nice to look at.
Oh, you find it a bit grim? Do you?
I find it a bit grim. In the concept art, she was kind of furry, but I suppose because she's splashing around in water a lot, they're like, well, let's not bother with the fur. Let's just make her. It's almost like skin. I don't know. It's just not very appealing. Like
grubs like that do have like a sort of a interesting sort of skin texture.
It makes sense.
Yeah, I guess if you don't like grubs, you're not going to like it. So.
No, that's the thing. So when she spends too long in that form, not only am I just waiting for, like you say, waiting for the moth form, but I'm also having to look at this strange worm.
Yeah, you feel like you're getting blue balls waiting for Mothra to turn up, completely. And then they give you these big white balls.
Yes,
then she becomes a cocoon.
The big white testes.
This isn't the worst example of the white balls. The
best white balls are probably in All Out Attack.
There's one movie where we spent the whole film just like cackling about the white balls.
That was All Out Attack. I'm pretty sure. Brilliant.
This is the thing with me, is that when you say to me, have you seen the three-headed monster? I'm just like, I probably have, but the names they get jumbled up for me. And even the next movie is not called Mothra versus Godzilla, right?
No, it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
I thought it had a different name.
No, it's Mothra. Oh, the US title is
there you go.
Godzilla versus The Thing.
That's what I'm thinking of. So I struggle with those names.
Yeah.
Thank goodness the next movie is just going to be called Godzilla and Kong, to just clear all that up.
So you know exactly which film we're talking about.
We'll get to that another day.
Oh, what a title. Good God. Good God. Mothra's caterpillar form. It was the biggest suit. That's
7 feet, isn't it? Or more.
7 feet high.
7 feet high.
I think it's 30 feet long.
What?
Yeah, huge.
Oh, what, so there's like a guy at the front of it, like pushing it along?
There's 8 people in it.
What the? No.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's huge.
Oh, man. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I think it's the scenes when she's like, traipsing across Japan, like go through Shibuya and Tokyo and then gets to the Tokyo Tower. That's the big suit.
But so when they slither up Tokyo Tower sort of vertical, does that swap to another suit then? Or do they just like string it up by some wires?
That's a smaller one. I think
so that's where I probably think there might be one guy in it, sort of thing.
I think it's smaller than people. I think it's a puppet.
It's a puppet. Well,
yeah. Actually, there's thinking about the special effects and things like that. I mean, most of the effects, pretty much what you'd expect. Miniatures, some composite shots, a big puppet, a suit. Yeah, wonky, as we say, very wonky.
Every single blue screen shot is poorly done.
I'm gonna give them the benefit of its age, because this was their second colour film.
Yes, I think probably you might get away with that sort of shadowing in a black and white a bit more, or the compositing would have been done a different way, even.
Yeah.
Not needing colour. So yeah, you're right, but still, it's like not a single shot that uses blue screen is actually what I would call serviceable in the final film.
No, it's really not good.
Which is a shame, because if they pulled it off, the miniaturization of the Shobijin twins would have been quite incredible. But with a modern eye looking at it, just like, this is just like...
I'd love to know what audiences thought back then as well.
There must be reviews. If you went into the research, you could probably find a review that makes some sort of comment on the effects being good or bad, or therefore, or not mentioning them at all. You know,
that's the thing. I'd really like to know, because like it seems so obvious. Like there's no way people would have thought. Like, I suppose, like you're saying, you know, if it's like almost like a modern effect, people probably wouldn't notice. Maybe they're like, oh, it looks weird.
How is this done? And then, like, you know, because the thing, we might look at movies that we watched when we were kids and they looked flawless then, and even now, if they still look good, you're just like, well, I know how that effect's done. That's a puppet dinosaur, that's a CGI dinosaur, I know because of XYZ and blah blah blah. And like, you know, times and sensibilities change, so maybe these composite shots just didn't stand out as much. But it really is, anytime you see the Shobijin twins are made to look small against a larger person, they will composite it and it doesn't look convincing at all. No. So it's a shame, really. But that, it could just be the age.
Maybe. We don't know.
We don't see the same level of bad compositing in other movies. So it might be that they just...
I don't think so.
They quickly sort of, we need to do this a little bit more. Understanding the technology a bit better, maybe on the next movie and
perhaps
following movies. Yeah.
Was there any... I'm trying to think now, in King Kong versus Godzilla, was there any? Yeah,
there's a bit, I think, when... after they defeat Kong at the Diet building, after he's climbed the National Diet building, there's a shot where they sort of they do a scale shot where he's in the background as like a large kaiju, and they're in the foreground, like sort of running away, and it's still a little bit iffy.
It's iffy, but it's way better than
much better. Yeah.
That was only a year later.
Exactly.
So I think the miniatures in this, man, the best. I think. I think there's kind of three standout sections. There's the Newkirk attack. You see the miniature city. And then the sections where Mothra's going over Japan, crushing through all the buildings and villages there. And then the end of that sequence, I suppose, is the third one, is the cocoon, the testicles on Tokyo Tower. But yeah, like when she's going through the city, like, it's so detailed. Like you see like phone booths, signs, you can even see curtains in buildings and stuff like that, and it's just unbelievably good.
I liked seeing all the cars sort of being hurricaned around in Newkirk City, and you can tell it's like small little toy cars, to be fair, but like just the notion of it seems very like a modern effect, and like that sort of like, this is a serious like impact on the city from like the gusts of wind that created by the wings, and it's very kind of creative, and it's like, this is a really cool sort of impact of showing you the power of this particular kaiju is not just walking up to a building and knocking over with like a simple smack. It's like, the whole presence of this creature is having an impact on the location, and that's really good and well represented. Yeah,
definitely. So we had in I don't want to keep doing this, we're referring to other discussions, but in King Kong versus Godzilla, we had a rather lengthy chat about why didn't they use Tokyo Tower for when Kong went on the National Diet building. I was like, well, why didn't they do that? So in this movie, obviously preceding it by a year, they used the Tokyo Tower, but apparently they were going to use the National Diet building, but they were like, no, that'll look crap.
Exactly. And then they did Tokyo Tower, and then it's like, well, what do we do for the King Kong one? Oh, we can't use Tokyo Tower because we got rid of it. Yeah. There's a little bit more to it, though. As I understand from the audio commentary, they wanted to use the National Diet building because they wanted to make it appear that Mothra was seeking out a location familiar to her home on the island she comes from, and that she was like, I'm going to pupate here because it looks like home.
Right.
And then they decided like, let's not do that for whatever reason. Let's use Tokyo Tower. And then that whole concept of her seeking out a familiar location was dropped from the story. But that is why they first wanted to do that. And then they were just like, well, that's not. But it does feel like they then painted themselves into a corner with the following movie. It was just like, well, if you if you watch these as a continuity, the building's been destroyed, regardless of it being repetitive of using it. It doesn't even exist in the movie series, technically. So they can't go to Tokyo Tower. And yeah, had we, seen or like realized that, we maybe would have had a different discussion in the other episode. But like, it makes perfect sense when you see this. And it's like, they kind of blew their load on that. Because really, Mothra doesn't need the Tokyo Tower the way King Kong does. Kong needs a building to climb that is iconic and tall. Yeah. And Mothra did not need to kind of lie down on Tokyo Tower.
Not at all.
So if they had the foresight, they maybe wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, the Tokyo Tower, which she broke and wasn't even a tower anymore. Yeah. That scene actually was great. I love that.
Yes, it is really good.
The way she's going up there, like the military are absolutely bombarding her, and it's not even a scratch on her. And she's just like, completely nonplussed by it. And just climbs the tower, snaps it off, falls over. Like, it's almost like they're not there. She does not give a shit.
So the Japanese army use these sort of heat rays on her to try and destroy the cocoon, and then it doesn't, it just hatches. Yeah. Is there a notion here that the orange and yellow on Mothra's wings is caused by those bright yellow-orange heat rays?
I was just thinking that. I was like, well, I wonder if this accelerated her metamorphosis.
Made her stronger.
Yeah.
They don't say that in the movie, right? There's no notion of that.
But I think you could hypothesize.
Yeah, may as well.
Yeah, let's go with it. Well, actually, in the concept art, she had like purple and blue wings.
Oh, well.
So maybe they hadn't come up with the idea to, do the whole heat ray thing yet.
They could have thought blue against the blue sky doesn't work, or we can't blue screen this creature if she's blue. Or
they just thought about it really hard. They were like, let's have it so her wings change when she gets attacked by the heat rays. I think you're right. I think that was it.
Convenience or otherwise. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Little sort of connection.
So those are the miniatures. I think that was kind of it for the miniatures, right?
There's not really that many. They sort of come and go because actually, like, I think it's fair to say Mothra doesn't feature hugely. She goes to like 3 locations, and if you want to stretch it, one of the locations is the big pool. Yeah. Which has actually, you can really see the wall which they painted for the sky.
It's kind of wrinkly
in the Blu-ray version. It's like, this is obviously just a wall painted blue.
It looks like wallpaper.
Right.
Like the dodgy wallpaper.
Better than other movies, maybe. We'll see. Maybe it gets cheaper. We'll find out.
We'll see. Were you going to say something else?
No.
Looks a bit ropey, but
it does. It's like this is the first time you've used it in color. So I guess they're like, we need to.
I think it is. Oh, actually, didn't the big pool come around for King Kong versus Godzilla? I'm trying to think when they built it.
But it's in this movie, so...
Is that actually the big pool?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right.
And the audio commentary for this Blu-ray confirms the existence of a small pool. It's not called the big pool just because it's big. It's like to differentiate it from another one.
Oh.
So it may be that they used a small pool on, Godzilla and Raids or other movies. Because presumably these pools, which they're using for these massive Toho-produced kaiju fights, they're making other movies in these rooms which might need big bits of water, right?
I'd assume so, yeah.
I
mean, for the life kind of, I don't know what you call these because they're not miniatures, but the life-size sections, the sets, I suppose.
The sets,
yeah, the sets. Get there in the end. Oh my goodness me. There's only really 2 that I could think of.
They reuse locations quite a bit.
So they have, when they first explore INPRNT Island, that's where you get the vampire plant that attacks Shinichi. That really reminded me of Stingray, where they were. Okay, you got that feeling too, because it was.
Well, just the sort of Jerry Anderson stuff in general.
Yes.
Yeah,
it has the same kind of colouring, I think, and.
But it's like colour films new. Get some colour on there. It has that vibe.
Makes sense.
So even Star Trek is a good comparison. This is predates Star Trek, but everything in Star Trek, the original series, is hyper colourful because colour TV was new. At that point, same philosophy going into it.
I really like it.
Oh,
I'm not sure if it's like a nostalgia feeling where it reminds me of stuff like Stingray and Thunderbirds and stuff like that. But seeing that, it gave me a very cozy feeling.
You don't get it so much these days. Like I know, like
the
superhero movies we often reference are colourful, but they're not. They're not as garish as they perhaps ought to be sometimes. I think they try to conceal it a little bit. It's just like, no, I want it. I want to see like the pop in colours.
Absolutely.
That's why I like the fight scenes in Godzilla versus Kong so much. That, you know, Shanghai climax was like, that's...
Oh, yes.
You know, this is what digital 4K footage is for, you know, as much as it was back when they invented colour film. So
Yep. Absolutely. And then the other set actually was also very colourful. That was the egg cave where they do the dancing and stuff like that. And I find that one's probably the most interesting for two reasons. One is because I think they based some of it off Easter Island, which is a Polynesian island, because they have like the I mean, they're just stone heads there, but like obviously the Easter Island has these giant statues with large heads. And I'm a big Easter Island buff, so seeing that, very pleasing to me. And the other reason I like it so much is because you have this kind of flora and fauna surrounding the egg, and it kind of tunes into this natural mysticism that Mothra has, which I feel separates it from stuff like, you know, Godzilla, where it's like, you know, dinosaurs, you know, it's got more of a sci-fi, they have more of a sci-fi grey grittiness to it. Seeing this, I guess because it's colour film, they want to make it colourful, but like I feel like it really tunes into that, you know, that element that I think is unique to Mothra.
You could argue that a failing of the story perhaps is that they talk about all these nuclear attacks on the island, nuclear testing that's been done there, but they never really kind of commit to explaining the small ladies or the giant bug. And it's like, you know, like Godzilla is a gritty, kind of gross, modern monster, as you say, in contrast to Mothra, because he is as like the result of like nuclear experimentation in some of the versions, and sometimes he's not. Sometimes he's just an ancient creature, right? And Mothra's just like, she's an ancient creature, but also there was nuclear stuff here, so it's sort of like it doesn't choose which one of those things it wants to go with.
Yes.
And that's a slight sort of like muddying of the waters from the screenplay, but whether or not it's worth caring about is debatable.
You're absolutely right. I think it is covered more in the book.
Right. Because all the God stuff is there. And,
yes.
Yeah.
And I think they had planned to do some more explanation of how they all survived, but it never, I think it was starting to bog it down too much. So, but it's interesting because the first thing that popped into my mind was how I was like, wow, it's so colourful, there's so much life there. And it reminds me of how the Chernobyl site, the nuclear site, is now like kind of teeming with life. Not completely, but you know, life is starting to come back. And it reminded me of that. Obviously this predates the Chernobyl incident by like 20 odd years. But it kind of accidentally ties into this nuclear theme, like not intentionally, but it's, you know, it sort of does. And I really liked this idea that, you know, the life flourished in spite of the nuclear testing. And I really like that aspect, whether intentional or not. It's interesting actually with Mothra. I can't figure out if this is the first Mothra to ever appear, because she hatches from an egg, right? Which would imply there was a Mothra before. Is it the same Mothra? Did that one die? I don't know.
I think the fact that the Peanuts have an entire repertoire of songs designed to call Mothra on suggests that there have been Mothras before. But what scenarios they would have existed in and why they aren't seemingly known about to the wider world is its own sort of flaw, perhaps, but it's not really important, is it? It's just like, you reap what you sow. You stole these little ladies. It's cultural appropriation. And he pays for it, despite the movie itself committing its own cultural appropriation sins, but blah, blah, blah.
Oops.
Covered that already.
Yeah.
Ironically forward-thinking, without ever sort of being self-aware.
Yes. Did you have a favourite moment from this?
I really liked, actually, the stage performance when the Shobijin twins were first sort of brought out and forced to sing, because I liked the notion that the audience and their captors are sort of like gleefully enjoying their music and it's great, but they don't realise what the twins are doing, that they're like calling for help, and that Mothra is going to come. And I like a scene where people sort of do misunderstand the thing that they are meddling with and then reap what they sow. So I liked that story element, and it was refreshing, as I said earlier, that this movie has such a strong narrative compared to so many of the Showa era kaiju movies, which are usually quite happy just to kind of be A to B conflict and done sort of things. This felt like it had characters who were kind of fish out of water here and there, or dealing with things they don't understand, and then, you know, getting a comeuppance out of it. So yeah, I liked that scene because it sort of encapsulated like what the movie was really sort of, that was the catalyst for the most drama, and it was different from other kaiju movies.
I have the same favourite moment.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
So good.
It's so good, and the way it's edited as well is fantastic. Like when they're singing, it then kind of cuts to the island, and it has like a echoey version of the song playing. Really well done.
It's like it's resonating within the sort of temple, sort of cave area that they're in.
So even though it kind of cuts to the, you know, the blackface section, it's still really, really good.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the blackface, is that it should be noted, if we didn't already, that it's not really done maliciously as much as it's done ignorantly.
That is the problem. But
well, it is a problem, but I mean, it's not like you're watching it like, oh, this is actually making you know, these people look stupid based on their race. It's still bad, of course, but it's not an outright attack as much as it's still kind of offensive, and it's the better half of the two things. If there is sort of an argument to be made there, that like at least it's not insulting in a sort of, you know, making a farce of them so much as being just like, you know, this is so naively done that you wish they had just thought about it a bit harder.
Same moment, same reasons. It's a great bit, absolutely brilliant bit of the film. And obviously you have that song there, which is just so good. It's just, perfect. Absolutely perfect moment. So it's quiz time.
Oh God.
Oh yes. So we got 4 questions.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if these are, I think you'll do quite well this time.
All right.
Let's see.
Fingers crossed.
See. Okay. Right. Question 1. Which of these is not an alternate regional title for the film? So which one is not a title?
All right. Which one is the one that you've made up?
Exactly. Mothra, the Winged Messiah. Mothra, the Wild Goddess. Or is it the Invincible Wonder Beast?
The Messiah one.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, I don't think they would stick Messiah in a title like that.
Yeah, well, there you go. You're right.
Yeah, that would be too touchy back then. Probably now as well, actually, to be honest. Unless it's actually Jesus Christ, they're not doing it.
There is a lot of... this is something I found quite strange. Oh, we're in the middle of the quiz. Probably not the best place to put it. But there's that whole religious aspect of Mothra. I found really actually quite confusing, because I was like, are they implying that, I think the Reliscan government, they knew that there were people on that island, they just didn't care that they were doing testing, right?
I think that's the implication.
But the parallels that Relisca has with Infant Island, with their religion, the symbology, and the music, their bells make the same tune that Mothra sings. It's like, are we supposed to think like, oh,
they are them? Descendants.
Well, this is the thing. Are they them, or is it that they went to the island, they brought missionaries along or something, and taught the villagers there about their own religion? You know, it leans into this whole, you know, Christianity, God thing. And like, there's this whole...
In a world where kaijus literally exist, what would the belief system be? Would you really have a Christianity? Or
I don't know.
You don't know.
Is the thing.
I mean, this is to assume that Christianity is made up, which is obviously debatable for some listeners, perhaps.
But I mean, like, you have those, is it there like Catholic priests in Relisca? And
so like religion still exists as we have it. It's always a bit,
And is the idea that Mothra is like a biblical figure? Like, you know, they don't really talk about it much really in this film, but, you know, the death and rebirth, you know, she's almost like, a biblical figure like Jesus or something. It's like, and I don't know if the parallels between Relisca and Infant Island are intentional, or if it's just I'm overthinking it.
I think the bells sounding the same is probably just because they're from the same sound library. Probably not more than that.
No, No, because the bells that play over the top, it's the same melody.
Oh, the melody.
Yeah, the melody for the bells is the same.
Maybe the wind of Mothra's wings just like makes it happen.
I don't know.
I mean, you could dig into the whole realistic thing of like, is it America? Is it Russia? Is it both? Why did they not just say New York City? And it feels like a kind of...
I think they didn't want to have a dig. They were like, oh,
that's what I assumed, is that there was like, let's not push any buttons with this.
It's it's
clearly America.
Well, yeah, I mean, they took a whole section out really because there was
in the American version or just generally.
Oh no, in the movie, because like in the book there was much more of this kind of political struggle, I suppose, because after the Second World War there was a treaty in place between the US and Japan, where it granted the US complete control of their military and their bases and stuff within Japan.
It's a very different podcast, but
yes,
really interesting stuff.
And then in 1960, there was a revised treaty where it granted Japan more power.
It was the walking of it back. It's like, okay, you behaved yourself.
Yes.
Let's give you some more freedom, effectively.
But that still upset a lot of the Japanese nation because they're like, well, we don't want this treaty. We want total autonomy.
Yeah, it's a Brexit type thing, even.
Yeah.
Effectively.
So like that featured quite heavily in, not that exact treaty, but this idea featured quite heavily in the book, which was then stripped out.
So then portraying America as an outright villainous thing might be just like, this is too overt.
Yeah, I think...
But then they still call it New Kirk City.
Yeah,
it's like...
I think they didn't want to be too... Yeah, you're
just
right.
Just make something up then. Because like Relicia, right? Sounds a bit like Russia.
Yeah, that's it.
So then they're like, oh, well, it's both things because maybe some Cold War commentary, but like kind of non-committal. It's just like, they obviously don't want to tread on any toes, but they're still saying enough that you have questions. And I would rather them just be like, oh, it's just like some totally made up country, or it's just a bit. It's like they could have done a lot of it that we've criticised. Obviously, we've praised the movie a lot, but with the kind of like explain Mothra's origins, kind of gets left off the table by that actual movie. When by the time they make the movie, that's all still in the book, right?
Yeah. And
same thing that you're saying, like, well, there was more in the book about this country, and it's like they've left it out to the point where it's like now the movie seems to be kind of lip service to this novel that wasn't even a book, and
it's almost raising more questions.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, yeah, if you're going to have a dig, do it properly,
or don't,
or don't at all. Yeah, it's. I think they didn't want to be antagonistic, but they
basically
yes. Yeah. So that's why they did it. But anyway, so that's question 1, which leads us actually quite nicely into question 2.
Oh.
So, what are the 3 colours of the Relican flag?
Oh, I know.
Oh, let me read the answers first.
Okay.
Steady on. Come on now. Red, white, and blue. Red, white, and green. Or red, white, and yellow.
Red, white, and yellow.
Yes.
It's like the sun, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think it's meant to be like the Soviet Union flag crossed.
No.
What?
Stop it. We're not drawing any aspersions here.
Yeah, so they wanted a completely unique flag, and that's the design they came up with.
It was
not based on anything.
And utterly unique. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So, moving on.
Question 3. What language are the lyrics for Mothra's song based on? Is it A, Tahitian, B, Indonesian, or C, Maori?
Tahitian.
Wrong.
Oh, sorry.
It was Indonesian.
Oh, it's because I was stifling a sneeze. I got it wrong.
Yeah, sure, that's why. So apparently they hired a uni student to translate their Japanese lyrics into Indonesian. It was like an Indonesian student. Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, question 4, last question. Which moth species is Mothra largely based on? Is it A, the eyed hawk moth, B, giant silk moth, or C, an atlas moth?
Atlas.
Incorrect.
Is a giant silk moth?
It's the giant silk moth.
Yeah, I thought so. That's a popular one because it's the one that's it's in Animal Crossing, and I was like,
Oh, is it? Oh, that's a shame.
I bet that's why it's an Animal Crossing is the thing.
Perhaps. Okay, so how did you do? You got 2 out of 4.
Yeah.
Which is, that's fine. It's better than the last one. Yeah, exactly.
In some circumstances.
Good job.
And I didn't sneeze.
Yes, well done. So,
maybe I'll do you, Chris, one day.
I was wondering whether you were going to. I've been, honestly, every episode I wait for you to do it. I'm like, you're going to do it to me, and it's going to absolutely derail me because I won't have a clue.
I wouldn't want we kind of 2 quizzes, and I wouldn't want you to go to the trouble of preparing a quiz and then me be like, I've got a quiz. So if you want me to do a quiz, you let me know and you'll get one.
If you want to do a quiz at any point, just do it.
Oh, okay.
Even if we have 2, who cares?
Well, you have to wait now, so it's a real surprise.
Yes, yeah. Oh, God. Oh, now I'm even more nervous. Okay. Right, so, overall, thoughts of the film. So, you know what, it's weird because I think I don't really have that much to say because I love this film so much. I absolutely love this film. Not to say it's one of the best ever. As we said, like, the pacing's a bit,
That's the same issues a lot of them have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which we could chalk up to it being an old film, really. But yeah, I like all the characters. I like the variety of characters. They're well acted. It's well cast. I like the fantasy story. I love Mothra's design. I love the music. Strong narrative. Right level of lightheartedness. With the comedy and the drama and stuff like that. And I think just everything about Mothra herself and the film are just so stand out from what we've already come to expect so early on. And I think Mothra as a whole is just inimitable. It's so utterly unique, and it's just so well done. Honestly, I can't say enough nice things about it. I know we criticize a lot of stuff to the absolute bitter end. But for this one, I don't know. I can't really criticize it too much because I think it's just it's that good. I absolutely love it. It's got a big place in my heart. I love this film. I really do. What about you?
I also really, really enjoyed it, and I think it is a slow but wonderfully varied movie. So many things do happen. It's got probably the best cast we've seen so far in our kind of watch through of these movies. I think the story's great. And some effects issues aside, it's so creative with the small people and the different kind of kaiju and the locations, and like love Tokyo Tower as a location and getting to see it kind of get destroyed and all that. It's just like, I think it's a really robust, well-rounded family fantasy movie. And really, really enjoyed it. And its detractors, which there are some significant, some less significant, are almost all down to age. And that's a shame, really, because it does make it a little bit harder to recommend, I think. But it's a quality movie, undeniably, and I think it serves as a blueprint to the rest of the Showa era, much, much more than you'd expect, because it doesn't even have Godzilla in it. There's no versus matchup here, but production values-wise, story-wise, I think we are going to see a drop-off. The more Showa we get through, eventually we're going to hit that wall of quality. We know it's coming, right? We're at the high point here, though. This is a gold standard in many ways of what you want as a well-rounded but not perfect movie. And as I say, the imperfections are more glaring as time goes on, both technically and culturally. But it doesn't take away from the fact that good movie, just have to take it as it is.
So as we always kind of come at it like, can newcomers come to this? It's a bit of a weird thing to say, I suppose, for like a film that's the first in a franchise, because it's like, well, obviously they can come to it because it's the first one. So I suppose it's better to say, like, is it worth watching? So like you're saying, is it, can you recommend, like you're just saying, it's a difficult one to recommend.
It is a bit.
I mean, it's light enough to watch, and it gives you a solid background of Mothra. It's got good music and blah, blah, blah. All that stuff's great. But yeah, it's the slowness, the age, the questionable representations, all that kind of stuff, enough to make you question whether to recommend it, I think.
Yeah, it's undeniably uncomfortable for large sections, I would say. And definitively, in my own opinion, I would say that Mothra is a fantastic historical artifact that is well worth watching, but I would not recommend it as purely entertainment. It's here as a significant part of the kaiju, history and the Godzilla series, because, once it gets, brought in sort of like, the cinematic universe kind of way. But yeah, if you're saying to me like, oh, I'm new to kaiju, should I watch Mothra? I'd be like, yeah, do watch it. But from an intellectual standpoint, regardless of how entertaining it is, to me, I wouldn't recommend it in any other way than this is an uncut historical artifact that is worth your time if that's the sort of thing you feel like signing up for. Yeah.
And it's got Hiroshi Koizumi in it, so that's always extra points.
Peanuts maybe balance out a bit.
Yeah. That's a good way to wrap it up.
I might feel differently about this once we come to watch Mothra versus Godzilla, because if that serves as a worthwhile reintroduction to Mothra, that might make it easier to say, like, you know what, skip that one and just go straight to that. But we'll have to see how much blackface is in that one before I can say that. I have seen it right
years ago, and I can't remember it.
But neither of us are above saying these do sort of, sort of ball up into one big thing in our adult minds.
Yes.
No matter how much we try to avoid that. Wait till we get to the movies that reuse footage. It's going to be a nightmare.
Oh. Look forward to that. So, now it's time for Kaiju Corner. So,
or is it Kaiju Arcade today?
Is it? Yes, it is. Is the answer to that. So, what is this section, Graham? For anyone new listening who might not know what the hell it is I'm just talking about now.
Well, usually in Kaiju Corner, we take a moment to focus on the other areas of culture that Godzilla and other kaijus pop up in. So, if there's like a brand deal with some Nike shoes, or a special pinball machine, or a video game appearance by a kaiju, that's something other than the movies that we want to talk about. So we kind of create this little space where we can get away from the films for a bit and just enjoy kaijus in their sort of cultural corner, if you will.
Yes, exactly. So for the last episode we recorded, King Kong vs. Godzilla, we didn't have Kaiju Corner.
No.
So sorry about that.
We talked for too long.
We talked for way too long, and we couldn't subject you all to that because it would have been
too long.
A very, very long episode. So we had to cut it. So on the last Kaiju Corner we had, which was the King Kong 1933 discussion, if you want to go back and listen to that, I mentioned what I considered one of the very few good kaiju games in existence, and it was Attack of the Friday Monsters on the 3DS.
Oh, yes.
Today we're going to talk about a new one.
A new kaiju video game.
A new kaiju video game called Dawn of the Monsters. So after our discussion, I was like, well, there must be more than just this Attack of the Friday Monsters. There must be more worthwhile kaiju games out there to play. So that's why I started looking around, and I came across Dawn of the Monsters. So just a little disclaimer here to everyone. I spoke to WayForward Games, the game publisher, about this, as it looked like my kind of game, and they were incredibly generous and gave me a review code for this. So just so everyone's aware. Dawn of the Monsters, it's a kaiju based side-scrolling beat 'em up by 13am Games. Now, as you know, and maybe some people listening as well, beat 'em ups are my favorite genre of video game. So if we've got
your comfort food in video game form.
Oh, absolutely. So if we've got a kaiju based one, I'm a happy bunny, frankly.
Are there any other significant kaiju sort of beat 'em ups or belt scrollers, as some people like to call the genre, where you sort of rampage your way beating up enemies from left to right?
Not that I know of. I think on the Game Boy Advance there was a Godzilla game that it was side-scrolling, but not really a beat-em-up as such, from what I remember. That was a long, long time ago I played that, so I can't really recall. But yeah, really, as a traditional beat-em-up, no, as far as I know. I don't know. This is the only one I've come across anyway, so people listening, let me know if there are others. Yeah, as far as I know, this is kind of the first one, or at least the first decent attempt at it.
So what did you think of Dawn of the Monsters?
So I was taken aback actually how in-depth the story was for it, because I thought it was just going to be a stop the baddies, fight the big one at the end, but there's more to it than that.
And these are completely original kaijus, aren't they? This is not Godzilla related or any sort of existing franchise related, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct, yeah.
They're all original characters.
In this, they're called Nephilim, not titans or kaiju or anything like that, as such. So, yeah, there's lots of supplementary archive materials within the game that you can read separately to kind of bolster the lore within the game. And I think it's worth reading, because I think investing yourself into the story actually just makes the game a lot better, because I did expect it not to really have a story, to be honest.
Often beat-em-up games don't.
Yeah, pretty much. Some of our favourites don't really have that much story.
They're almost all just get to the end and beat the biggest bad guy, and he's a bad guy, and now you've beaten him and it's the end.
Exactly.
I'm not usually looking for more than that, but now we've come through gaming and we're in a more modern era, right? And there are so many beat 'em up games. It seems fair that they start to sort of evolve the genre a little bit and add in some narrative. I mean, Streets of Rage 4 definitely had more story elements than the previous 3 Streets of Rage games from the 90s. So it's definitely sort of tracking along with the trend.
And I think there's been a bit of a resurgence lately in beat 'em ups. So now that's starting to, people are thinking, how are we going to make this better? Yeah. This game really reminds me of Tokyo SOS and Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, but actually in a good way. As listeners will know, we weren't huge fans of those particular films. Maybe you were more of a fan than I was. But this game actually made me look at them in a different light, and I actually want to rewatch them now.
Because it reuses the same narrative idea, but you get to have some agency over it, perhaps, and
yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it just works better as a game then.
Some stories probably do, and often when games are translated into movies or TV shows, people say, "Oh, it's just like watching a game," and that can be a positive or negative thing. Really, I mean, people said that watching the Witcher TV show was just like watching a game, and I was like, well, yes, because it's a good game, and these are the stories or whatever. But sometimes it can be really negative, but I think sometimes you do watch a movie and you're just like, I'd much rather be playing an active role in it,
Yeah. The elements that I think remind me of those movies is like, because you have pilots that, control these mechs. You have like some human conflict within the team, because they need to stop these Nephilim basically taking over the world. So yeah, there's a team set up to stop that, and then it's set a bit further into the future as well. And those Millennium Era movies, they seemed to be set further in the future. And even the hangar where you see 2 of the kaiju being stored that you can play as looks similar to the hangar where Mechagodzilla was being stored in those movies.
I suppose. I mean, I know you have not seen the series, but I suppose there probably is some Neon Genesis Evangelion DNA in here. Quite
probably.
And probably a bit of Pacific Rim, which is largely inspired by Evangelion.
Yeah, I did get some kind of Pacific Rim sort of vibes from it as well. So yeah. There's one criticism I do have about the story though. I feel like it can feel a little disorienting, because you have these things being mentioned within the game. So, like, for example, there's something called Project Raven and something called the Triple Incident.
Triple Incident?
Yes.
Not Third Impact, then.
What's that?
That's a major story point in Evangelion.
Interesting. Okay. So, the idea is for this stuff to become apparent as the story unfolds. But I know I have a problem. This might just be me, where sometimes I don't know what information is relevant to me.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Yeah, and I don't really know what to retain or prioritize when I'm recalling it. So you're kind of taking in absolutely everything that's thrown at you, and I find it a little bit overwhelming. I feel like there needs to be a bit more context and explanation when you're thrown into a completely unknown world that's already got quite a rich history.
It sounds from what you're saying. I mean, I've not played the game and you have in this situation, but it sounds like the game is very sort of all-encompassing of kaiju influences in a positive way, not like in a sort of a ripping off. It's homages, right?
Yes.
I would guess that if I was playing this, not to say the story is good or bad because I've not experienced it, but I'm not the sort to go into a back catalogue of text files as you might and read up on a story. So would you say it's fair that you can enjoy it sort of like as a dipping in and out of a Saturday morning cartoon type thing, where it's like got that vibe of seeing a few episodes here and there, but not seeing it every week, and you're sort of getting the flavour of a rich story just as a genre trope when you can engage with it or not if you choose to?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
You definitely can. I think, this is where it might just be a personal problem for me because I want to know.
Right, and I guess you can, though, if you go back and read the things.
Yeah. But yes, you're absolutely right. You can jump into this without reading a single thing if you didn't want to. The story unfolds.
It seems like it's mentioning things like triple incident to deliberately sort of pique you and just like, oh yeah, that's like, this other thing that I know, and it's sort of deliberately sort of playing the role of a pastiche, a loving pastiche or a sort of affectionate pastiche of kaiju stuff.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's fair to say.
Looking at the images of it, it has a really nice sort of comic book art style.
So
super colourful. That's
the thing. So the art style, I didn't fully get it actually when I first started playing it. It sounds strange because the title screen was so colourful. I was surprised at how limited the colour palette was for the backdrops. So the playable characters are very striking. But against that backdrop, I was like, I expected them to be equally as colourful. But I since read that the art style is actually reminiscent of Mike Mignola, who did Hellboy. And knowing that, I was like, oh yeah, they nailed it. That is exactly right.
Yeah, you're right, with these big, thick, black, very heavy line weights, and then there's some striking, big blasts of colour at certain points.
It reminds me of Beautiful Joe, those games.
Yeah, the sort of... Beautiful Joe almost has like a collage sort of art style to it, where the elements are separated out, but the artwork is very much like this sort of super thick, chunky. The shading on all of the muscles and stuff is very defined.
Yeah, it's very very well realized art style, I think.
Gives you a good sense of scale. There's one image I'm looking here where there's a big sort of swathe of white across the front, and then the back of the kaiju is all black, so it's like strong light and shadow, and they look big actually. Now I look at it, it has a very good sort of angles that they've used to sort of accentuate the size.
And the music's really good as well actually. I find the more you play, as you get closer to the end of the game, it really sets the mood for all the twists and turns, and the events that unfold. It's really good.
How would you rate the combat itself compared to something like River City Girls or something older like Golden Axe? Is it very repetitive button mashy stuff?
No, it's not button mashy.
It's more combo based.
It is more combo based. So it sort of plays how I always hoped the SNK King of the Monsters games would play.
Oh yeah, which I hear aren't that great really.
Yeah, I mean they're like wrestling kaiju fighters that don't really have very good controls in my opinion. But this is a lot more satisfying and kind of plays how you would expect it to. But yeah, it's a lot more combo focused. You couldn't just keep hitting the light attack button and that's it. You've won the game.
It's not sort of picking up in the Scott Pilgrim versus the World sort of era of beat 'em ups that we're still very much in, I guess.
Yeah. So you kind of have to think about what it is you're doing.
Different enemies have a different approach rather than just
exactly
get in where you can. I mean, I love the classic beat 'em ups like Final Fight and Streets of Rage, but they can be won with one or two buttons, and every enemy is basically the same.
Yeah,
I liked it when I played Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and you could enjoy sort of investigating different approaches to different kinds of enemies.
Yeah.
Did you play this alone, or would it be good as co-op? I'm assuming it's got co-op. I mean, how many players can sit and play this at one time?
It's 2-player co-op, which I didn't get to do.
I see. You can play it 4-player then?
Not that I could see. Because there are 4 playable characters. So you get the 2 kaiju you could play as. There's Megalodon, who's kind of based on Godzilla, and Gojira. It's like a kind of lobstery crab thing, kind of like Ebora. I found I preferred playing as the kaiju over the mech character, which is
the
Tempest
Ultraman
Galahad.
type characters.
Yeah, exactly. You get Tempest Galahad and Aegis Prime.
Good names.
Yeah, they are very good names. They're faster, but I preferred the big, powerful hits and the weightiness of the kaiju. The Nephilim. As it was more satisfying to play that way. But what I really liked about what felt unique about this was there's like a rage mechanic in the game.
Okay.
Where as you're fighting and doing combos, you're building your rage meter, which you can then use to restore your health by performing certain actions. Or you can use it for special moves and things like that. And as you do these special moves, you then build a cataclysm meter, which is like the big attack you can do. And that kept all the fighting interesting. You do have a variety of enemies to defeat, which does keep it interesting. But having this mechanic, I felt, sets it apart from just being a button mashing beat 'em up, which it was very unique. And it's very appealing without being too complicated, which I think is important, because the more complex a game is, the less inclined I am to play it, frankly, which is probably why I like beat 'em up so much. So yeah, it's just the right level of complexity for me.
It's nice when you get a game that gives you a few options of what level you want to engage with it at. Based on the story elements this applies to you and the complexity of its sort of combo system, it feels like it achieves a sort of couch co-op sort of play along sort of vibe, but you can go a bit deeper if you want to, I suppose. Yeah. It was. I played it from start to finish. Finished the game, got to the end. Very satisfied. It was, straight up enjoyable. I really enjoyed it. So you would recommend it? I would absolutely recommend it. It's very well put together, good mechanics, great music, great art, nice story. And you can tell that they knew what makes a good kaiju story interesting. It's not just having monsters Hulk smash their way through a threadbare story. There's something there to grip onto. If any of that sounded appealing, I would recommend it to anyone. It's especially if you like beat 'em ups, it's right up my alley. So I'm sure it'll be up yours too. So where can you play it if you are so inclined? It's on everything, I think. So it's like I played it on the Xbox on the Series X because it has that's in 4K. So I was like, that's nice, very nice. But it's on Switch as well. It's on PC, PlayStation. All the ones you'd expect. Great fun. Loved it. Really did enjoy it. I think there's some DLC coming. So they might add a 4-player, perhaps, co-op. Potentially. Yeah, maybe. Seems logical. Yeah. If there's enough room on the screen for all these guys to be moving around. So that was that. Great game. Really enjoyed it. So thank you, Way Forward, for that. I had a great time with it. I think that's kind of it, really. So I guess what we should say is, what movie are we going to watch next time? That's a very important thing to bring up. Thank you, because I always forget to kind of mention this stuff. So the next movie we're going to be watching is Mothra versus Godzilla, or as it's known in the West, Godzilla versus The Thing. Yeah, I know. So that'll be the next one. So I'm looking forward to that. I would love to refresh my memory on it because I've completely forgotten it. I don't think it's as good as Mothra from what little I remember feeling about it. I haven't watched it yet. You've not seen it. So I'll be experiencing it anew, and we'll see. We'll see. It's one of the ones I've not seen. Yeah. Probably because if I ever saw the title Godzilla versus The Thing, I would have been like, I wouldn't have wanted to watch that versus something with Mecha Godzilla or Ghidorah in the title. If I know that The Thing was Mothra, maybe I would have. Shows the level of insight I apply to these. Okay,
So I think, is there anything else we need to mention? Anything else you want to mention, Graham?
Well, if people are wanting to send us game codes or God knows what else, where are they going to contact you, Ben?
You can contact the show on Monster Island Radio on Instagram, or on Twitter it's Monster Island RP, or you could message or comment on YouTube. There's any way you could think of, there's probably a way to reach us. So any of those platforms, you can find us. I also have my own personal Instagram account where I've got my drawings and stuff like that. Last episode, I plugged a Kong picture I drew, which is available for purchase.
But this time,
baby, we've got a Mothra picture that I've drawn.
Wow.
So I'm plugging that this time. The print is available on my INPRNT store. If you go to my Instagram, you can see, you'll find all the links. So if you like the look of the Mothra print I've made, then, go ahead and buy one, or like it on Instagram or something like that. That would be lovely. If you would like to rate us on Apple or Spotify, please do so. That would be lovely. Or like our video on YouTube. We'd appreciate all that stuff. Or if you
share your ideology with Monster Island Radio.
Please do. Really, we do love hearing from you. Everything.
Yeah.
So we'd love to speak to you all. So yeah, please get in touch. What about you? What else? Have I missed anything?
No.
Great. So
just happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant.
Looking forward to another chatty time.
Yeah.
Kaiju chatty time was a rejected title for this podcast.
So until the next episode. Bye bye.